And welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to use variables in your console application. They're very useful and they're going to be helping us with our coding. But before we get started, I want to just note a small error that I made in the last video. And that was for our second console.write line, which stated press any key to quit. It's actually the enter key. And the reason for that is because we are reading the entire line. So lines are not terminated unless we press the enter key. So just make sure you change that to hello world for your first write line. And the second one's going to be press the enter key to quit. That makes a lot more sense. Hello world, press the enter key to quit. We press the enter key and our program terminates correctly. So now that that's out the way, let's get started with variables. So what is a variable? Well, there's three parts to a variable. First, it's what type of variable is it? What is the name of the variable, and what is the value of the variable? So we can assign values to variables, and you can think of it this way. The name is a representation of a value because it gets stored in memory. And so anytime you want to reference that value, you can just call it by using the name of the variable. So in this case, I see that I'm using the console.write line to output hello world, and I want to store this text in a variable. So let's go ahead and store hello world into a variable, and this is going to be of type string. Anytime in C# when you're dealing with text and you're using variables, it's always going to be a string. Okay, so just think of it that way. Text equals strings. Now I'm going to go ahead and name it. So in this case, I'm going to just say this is a greeting, and I'm going to assign a value, and that value is going to be the text that we used, which was hello world. And you terminate the line by using a semicolon. A lot of people freak out about it. What if I forget about it? Well, if you actually don't use a semicolon at the end of your line, Visual Studio is very, very good at letting you know that something's wrong. You can see a red squiggly line there. If I also try to start my program, there are build errors. So don't worry about it. You'll get used to it, but just terminate your lines with a semicolon. And now I have successfully assigned a variable or declared a variable. I have assigned the value hello world to the greeting variable, which is of type string. Okay. And how do I reference this variable? All I got to do is just type the name of the variable. So I'm going to type greeting in line 17. I'm going to run my program, and it says hello world, press the enter key to quit. Nothing has changed for the end user, but the way that we're coding is a little more efficient and it's a little more organized and better. Let's do the same for the end of the program section. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and store the final greeting or the goodbye in a string variable, and I'm just going to name it end. It's not the best name, but I'm just going to say that's the end. Now I'm going to go ahead and reference it at the very end portion of the program, and I'm going to go ahead and type end, as that's the name of the variable that's storing the string of value. Press the enter key to quit. Let's go ahead and run our program, and once again, nothing changes for the end user. Their experience, it's exactly the same, but we're coding a little bit better and we're using variables. What happens if I were to, let's comment this out for one moment, and let's add greeting and end together. Now, the plus sign is commonly used for calculations. So if we do addition, we take, 10 plus 5, we'll have 15. What happens if you actually add two strings together? Well, let's find out. Let's run the program, and it outputs both of our variables. But you'll notice that it'll output them without any formatting. Immediately after hello world exclamation mark is outputted, we see press the enter key is outputted as well. Well, what's actually happening here is a process within C# called concatenation. And I know it's a weird word, but you often hear that when you go ahead and just pretty much, I don't want to use the word add, but you pretty much just paste both strings together. So you'll say, hey, how about you concatenate those two strings together? Or, you'll hear references like that, concatenate. And so this is called concatenation, and it'll just take two strings and just paste them together. In this case, I've pasted greeting and end together. There's no formatting, and I just kind of wanted to show you how that worked. Now, let's say I want to actually not concatenate, but I want to do calculations. Well, let's change some of these variables. Let's make new variables. Let's say I actually have the number, let's say lucky. Let's say lucky is 7. And let's say I have another number called 8. These are the worst variable names, but we're just learning here. So we actually are going to take 7 plus 8. So let's concatenate them. And we should do some math here and find out what's the addition of lucky and 8. Let's run our program, and we see it's 78. Well, that doesn't make any sense because the value, if you add a 7 and 8, should be 15. So what happened here? Again, you want to remember it's concatenating two strings, and all the program knows is it needs to take those two strings and pretty much glue them together. So when we work with numbers, we never want to use strings. We want to use integers. Integers are numbers. In this case, you can declare them by using the int keyword instead of string. And let's do numbers are integers. And let's do strings, or let's do text. Text is strings. Okay, and you can see that Visual Studio is complaining. It's saying, hey, you want to assign the value of a string to an integer by the name of lucky. That's not really going to work. So when you deal with numbers, you don't use double quotes. You just type the number. And so now we've satisfied Visual Studio, or the compiler in this case, and we see lucky and 8 are both integers. Now we're going to go ahead and add lucky to 8. Let's run our program. And you can see now it's the correct amount. It's 15. We're going to go ahead and press enter to terminate the program. And we've learned a valuable lesson. We never use strings for calculations, or when we use numbers at all. We actually use what's called integers, and you can perform calculations. Well, what if you want to subtract? Well, go right ahead. Lucky minus 8. Let's run the program. In this case, we have -1. And let's see if we can mix both of them. Let's take lucky minus end, and that just won't work. If we try to run our program, we have build errors. The thing about C# is it's a little bit different from other languages. In, let's say, for example, JavaScript, you can actually do this, lucky minus and the program will interpret that in a certain way that it'll make it work. It'll, I believe off of the top of my head, will actually concatenate them. Actually this is subtraction, so I'm not sure what it actually does, but in C#, it's going to let you know that these two data types don't play well together. So we can't really mix these two data types, and we want to stick to using the correct data types. Now, what happens if we do lucky plus end? That will actually work, but warning, it will concatenate them. So when we use subtraction or division or any type of other calculation, it won't work because it doesn't play nice with both with different types of data types for the variables. But if you actually add them, it'll say, hey, I know what I can potentially do. I'll just concatenate them together and treat them as strings. So in the case of addition or using the plus sign, it'll actually just go ahead and concatenate them. And in this case, we can see that 7 and immediately press the enter key. Okay, so just wanted to point that out. But if we're working with numbers, we're going to declare variables with integers and text with strings. If you guys like the content, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be covering other types of variables in the next coming videos. And until next time, thank you so much.